A megadonor to the Republican Party and backer of President Trump in 2016 is now putting money behind Florida Governor Ron DeSantis for president in 2024. And joining us now from Texas is Point Bridge Capital founder and CEO Hal Lambert. And it's good to see you, Hal. Good morning.
Good to see you, Joe.
You obviously made this decision for how many reasons? For a number of reasons. Primarily, give me the top 3 or 4.
Well, I mean, let's start with the first one. I want to win. And, you know, to win a general election, you have to do a couple of things. You have to have a fired-up base of your party, and then you also have to win independents and middle-of-the-road voters in swing states. And, look, Trump can fire up the base, but he's lost the middle-of-the-road, the independent voters, certainly in swing states. And he fires up the Democratic base like nobody else. So, I mean, I don't see him winning states that we have to win, like Arizona, Nevada, New Hampshire, Wisconsin. We lost all those states in 2020. And look, I was a big supporter of President Trump. I raised him a lot of money last cycle. I even started that ETF with the ticker MAGA. So I've been a big supporter. I just don't think he can win. And then you contrast that with Governor DeSantis. I mean, he turned a 50-50 state into a plus 19 Republican victory last cycle. He won Hispanics by 30 points, won them by 30. He won Miami-Dade County that we haven't won in decades, that Hillary Clinton won by 30 points. He won Miami-Dade. He won 62 of 67 counties. He won independents. He won women. He won across most demographics. He's a candidate that can win those swing states, and I just don't simply think President Trump can do it.
How he he did it in Florida, I would say that it was not pandering to all people all the time. I think he took some very precarious positions on a lot of things. COVID, the voting rights, whatever you want to call the don't say gay legislation. And he didn't really waver in spite of some withering criticism obviously from the media. And then it ended up in 20 points, which was a shocker to me, which makes me wonder whether that can translate into a national race. I don't know if there's a journal piece today that says DeSantis, it's in the op-ed section, DeSantis has a record of, sounds like Charlie Sheen, winning, but has a record of winning. And then it says the media sneer that he's unlikable and distort his legislative achievements. Here are the facts. But here's the perception. The perception is he picks fights with corporations, so he's not a real Republican. He doesn't let the free market operate because he's, doing all these things to Disney. Did that set him back? Did that make you question whether he's the right guy? Any of the Disney stuff, Hal?
No, absolutely not. Look, the Disney fight is a fight that many Americans have been wanting to have. They're upset with corporate America. You saw it with Bud Light. You're seeing it with Target. They're tired of pushing these things that have nothing to do with brands especially on children. And that's what Disney was doing. And then they jumped in and attacked the legislature in Florida, and they attacked Governor DeSantis, and he pushed back. So, look, Governor DeSantis is a fighter. He is going to fight. He is conservative. He didn't back down on any of those fights, as you just said, Joe. And so
Hal,
he's the first.
What's conservative about free speech? What's conservative about free markets? Historically, as Joe was saying, it was actually the liberals who were the activists when it came to social issues and the like. Now it's almost the opposite.
Well, I think there's activism on both sides, but I would just say this. It's not about free speech. He's not saying Disney can't say that. He's just saying, look, you guys have a special tax break that no other company in the state of Florida has. You've had it for decades. You're getting tax benefits. You're getting, independence that nobody else has.
Right, and we don't like what you're saying, and so we're going to take those tax breaks away. He's been very, very clear about it. It's not. He said it's retributive. It is retributive. We know what it is.
But states have a right to do that. If you look at states are trying to get companies to come to their states by giving them tax breaks, by doing things for them. So that's what states do. That's what they do at the state level is give tax breaks or not give tax breaks based on companies that they want there.
Hal, what do you think of Speaker McCarthy's efforts to extract some spending cuts from the White House? You only had a 4-member margin in the House. The Senate's a Democratic Senate. You got a Democratic president. DeSantis was trashing that all over that. Bad deal, should have gotten more, should have, gotten closer to default. Why is he picking a fight? He doesn't like McCarthy. He's picking a fight with the leader of the House, which is the one body that Republicans happen to control at this point. What about that? Did you think it was a bad deal? You think McCarthy was a bad deal?
I don't think it was a great deal. I mean, we're going to spend $4 trillion over the next year and a half. So, I mean, deficit. We're going to have a $4 trillion. We're going to spend more like $6 trillion. But we're going to have a $4 trillion deficit over the next year and a half. We're headed towards about a $36 trillion debt. So, the Democrats got what they wanted. But look, McCarthy didn't have a hand to play. This played out exactly. This played out exactly like I thought it would happen. In fact, I thought we'd end up with fewer Republicans supporting it.
How does it what do you think of where these polls are now? And I will grant you that in previous elections, we never know how they're going to play out, and it goes to Iowa or New Hampshire or South Carolina. Suddenly everything changes with a win here or win there, because national polls, like, they're 35 points or something for Trump versus DeSantis. How do you see it working where he gets it versus someone, some people think Tim Scott is just unbelievably appealing and that he might be a candidate to watch. There's quite a few. But why do you think it's DeSantis, and how does he do it? How does he vanquish the former President Trump, who seems to have such a big lead?
Well, look, President Trump has a lead now, but DeSantis just got in the race. So what he's going to do is he's going to campaign, and you're going to see him in Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, the early states. Those leads are going to narrow in those states. I predict the national polls, which, by the way, are really pretty meaningless. I mean, you're surveying 1,000 people. Many of them are in California and Texas. So it's going to narrow, I think, quite a bit. Trump should drop back below 50%, and the race will be on.